Gather round, friends. It's time for Officials Tales. Hosted by three retired sports referees that coaches throughout Northern Ohio knew as the Three Blind Mice. They are authors of the book called Officials Tales. So let's meet the authors and your hosts, Jimmy Borgia, Rick Hall, and Don Nardecchia for today's edition of Officials Tales. Now here's your host, Rick Hall.
And welcome everyone to tonight's episode of Story Time with a little video review and having a little fun with that. And I'm joined as always by my buddies Don Nardecchia. How you doing, Don?
I'm doing great, Rick. It was 64 degrees down there today. How's it up in Norwalk?
It was a little icy this morning, but
I heard.
We're getting there now.
I heard.
Of course, it's coming back on Saturday. So, and hold on, let's get Jimmy. Hey, Jimmy, there you are.
There we go.
Woo, boy, you get homelier every time I see you. But that's all right.
Evidently, you haven't looked in the mirror lately. If you think I look bad,
hey, cheers to you, boys.
Yes.
I thought since it's story time, we should add in a little drinking and thinking. So tonight's not only stories, but we're going to give some in-depth analysis of a couple of these videos. We had some pretty interesting things happen in the last week in college basketball. And we're going to figure out, what the heck we could have done any different. So without further ado, we are going to take a peek. Hang on, fellas. Away we go. Video number one.
Very heated at the tail end of this Arizona State-Arizona rivalry game. As BJ Freeman of ASU, they were getting into it with Caleb Love, and he just headbutts Caleb Love. But the thing about this situation is Love ended up getting ejected as well, which means Love played his fair share of part in this, and he had a big game. He was definitely talking a lot of trash. Arizona State's coach Bobby Hurley said that he was kind of classless the entire time talking to the Arizona State bench, so that's what could have sparked this. Like I said, you see BJ Freeman headbutting Caleb Love, but Love still gets ejected as well. And then as the time expired, when Arizona State players were going to dap up U of A players, Bobby Hurley, the coach, was pulling them away, telling them and motioning them to get off the court, and he refused to shake hands with Tommy Lloyd, the U of A coach, either. He kind of just waved him off and dismissed him, and he kind of said he didn't want this to lead to anything further. He didn't want things to escalate in the handshake line. Tommy Lloyd said there was no bad blood between this, and Bobby Hurley said that Arizona's players were classless when they were talking to the team before Freeman ended up headbutting Caleb Love, leading to his decision to not shake hands to try to avoid an escalation.
All right, guys. So what do you think of that?
Classless.
Yeah.
But which team? It's
Exactly.
sounds like it was burning all night, and it just wasn't addressed when it should have been addressed. And these guys are high strung, and there's a lot of trash talking that goes on during basketball games at the college level, and you just got to monitor it and know when it's getting to a tipping point. You tell the captain, tell your players. You step in during a free throw and tell both teams, yeah, that's it. That's the signal we're looking for there.
That's it.
So we used to use, it's time to tighten things up. And, these officials at that level have worked a lot of ball in their careers to get there. And they should have a pretty good feeling about when it's time to use that technique and to tighten things up a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Just didn't get done. It's just, and I say this, it's coming to this time of the season. They're on the home stretch. Colleges will play about another 4 weeks before the league tournaments, but they've been playing since early November. And little things turn into big things in a hurry at this time of year. And, we kind of saw it at times. We knew the volatility of some games in the high school, at the high school level, when you get to that last lap of the regular season. And you just have to be a little bit more aware and, don't pass it off as it's nothing.
Right.
That's what you get when you pass it off as nothing.
Jimmy, what is your opinion?
I think not going through the line shaking hands was a good idea because, like he said, you had here, what was it, last year when, or the year before when they had Bowling Green, had the women's team had going through the line and that girl hauled off and punched her by foregoing the, the chance that there could be some more swinging, fighting, pushing, shoving, whatever the hell. I guess it was a good idea, but I had not seen this until Rick had showed it. And the way when we were talking about it, I thought it was in the first half. I didn't know it was towards the end of the game.
No, and I will say this. Now, I know how we work, okay?
Yeah.
We would have addressed this in the first quarter. There would have been none of this trash crap. We'd have got up and said, hey, guys, that's enough. Actually, I can actually remember this happening to me in a basketball game once. I was at Mansfield Senior, and they were playing, I think, Lexington. And that's when they were at Pete Henry Gym. And we all know Pete Henry's a cracker box.
The old Pete,
So
yeah.
the Pete, and underneath the baskets, student sections, right? So during play, or even during a free throw, there was a few students yelling at players from the other team and saying shit to them and things. And I remember leaning back to the kids going, hey, if you want to stay here, knock it off. And the one kid goes, hey, that's my cousin. I'm like, oh, okay. So, but we put an end to it there. He quit talking. Now, as far as pulling your team off the floor, now that happened to me in a baseball game. I was coaching at Lefty Grove, and we had a team that was blatantly cheating us. Actually, Billy Seitz was our umpire, and he's the one that brought it to my attention. When anytime a ball got hit out of bounds or hit foul ball, and they had somebody to go retrieve it, the other team would supply a ball. Well, come to find out, the balls they were supplying our pitchers, which I didn't know from the dugout, was T-ball balls, little tiny soft T-ball balls that they were jacking out of the park. Billy brought it to my attention. I brought it to the attention of the other coach, who happened to be the league administrator at the time, not Scott Ford, but somebody underneath them. And she pretended to tell me to shut up, and we're not cheating, and we're not doing this, and we're not doing that. And in the meantime, my kids are now talking, what the heck's going on? And she's telling them to shut the F up and all this other crap. Now we're talking, 13, 14-year-olds. And she's talking, maybe even younger, maybe 12, I don't know. And she's talking stuff to us, and I'm like, look, Billy, I said, if I'm not going to play if they're going to keep throwing in gopher balls. No, we're not doing that. We're all, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, you know what? And after she had used the fourth or fifth F-bomb to me and my team, I said, you know what? You got it. We're leaving. I pulled the team off the field, and we walked. And Scott Ford pulled me aside later. I mean, I remember, God rest his soul. I remember talking to him. And he said, look, you really shouldn't have done that. I said, look, if she'd have been professional and not been yelling profanities at me and my team, we'd have played. And not trying to cheat us because they couldn't beat us regularly. So I was like, you know what? I'm not listening to this. So, yeah, I actually still have the ball that they cheated with. I still have it. So all that being said, I know what he felt like. So now let's get back to video number 2. This one is the expression. This is very interesting. Take a peek at this bad boy.
Good ball movement. Hawkins for 3. And JoJo Tugler
Did you see it?
Oh,
Okay. You'll
is
see it.
down.
can you make it bigger?
Oh, it's full screen.
It looks like he might have taken a shot to the nether regions, King. Not fun for anybody.
Definitely not fun.
So a hot shooting start from 2 hot shooting teams.
Let's take a look at this right here. This is where it's what you have to do. When Houston doubles, you have to be able to kick opposite. They specifically worked on that in shoot around. JT Toppin, only 6 assists in the last 8 games.
Number 1 in defense, and they're one of only 2 teams in the top 10 in either of those categories.
Red 15 will be assessed a flagrant 2 personal foul and ejected.
Now that is some breaking news. JT Toppin has
Now look at the time.
I saw it second
Okay.
time.
All right. Now
been
let's
ejected
listen here.
from the basketball game. A flagrant 2 foul on the leading scorer and rebounder for the Red Raiders, and JT Toppin gets the gate just 4 minutes into this game.
We have to take another look at this one. I disagree with that.
You got to see it before that.
Yeah,
And JT Toppin doesn't even
we
realize
saw
it.
it.
Watch the guy shooting the ball. Watch his right leg as he goes up
It's gonna
in
be
the
2
air
shots in the ball for Houston,
to shoot.
and JT Toppin
Don't look at the
is
ball.
in
Don't look at the
disbelief.
I
arms.
think that's a horrible call. I think that's absolutely horrible. I think that's a horrible call. I do not think he intentionally stuck his leg out. I think that is a horrible call, Rich.
And Grant McCaslin is livid, and understandably so. He's actually looking at an iPad to see a replay of the play that got
See
JT.
that right leg come
There
up?
it is. Now that's on the pass.
That's not normally the way you shoot a jump shot or throw a jump
That
pass.
is not a flagrant 2 worthy. I think
Now I will tell you that the coach also got a technical foul later, but he didn't get ejected. Now, my question to you guys, let's start with Jimmy because I started with Don last time. What do you think? Now, if you saw that live, Jimmy, okay, now we're not talking college where we can flagrant 2 and look at the video and eject the guy. What do you do or say if you see that play live in the first quarter?
Well, I said he's jumping up to make a pass to a teammate, but how did that leg get up that high? And, depending on where that landed, I'm blowing it dead there. We don't even get the shot off.
Okay, but do we assess a foul? Do we assess a technical foul? Or do we just go talk to the kid? The kid that kicked. No, obviously, not the kid
Again,
that's on the
at
ground.
the angle that I'm looking at, I couldn't tell that much. I mean, the referee that was behind it, or had a good enough straight line that he could see what was
you're the
going
trail.
on.
You're the trail. You're looking right at it.
Right.
What do you got?
Right.
What do you got? I mean, what do you do?
I would have called a foul, killed the ball right there, and then went from that.
So we're not going to go intentional. We're not going to go technical. We're going to go, I got a foul. We call it an offensive, whatever the heck we want to call it, correct?
Right.
Where we're going. All right, Don,
Right.
what do you got?
Well, the way he jumped, if every player, every time they jumped, threw one leg up in the air in front of him, not many of them would land on 2 feet.
No.
Right.
That's a voluntary action, which means the person that jumped made himself do that. And it's not an involuntary, which when you jump up, the involuntary action is to allow yourself to land on 2 feet, not once you've gotten in the air. And the fact that it was delivered right squarely between the legs tells me that was a voluntary act. Why? What had happened before that? I'd like to know.
Yeah, we don't know
Not that it would make much difference here, but I think what the official, from what I could see, and it looked like he wasn't starting to go up to to shoot. I think when those two defenders doubled him, maybe he was thinking about a shot, but when those two defenders doubled him, he made the long pass across the top of the key to his teammate, and then the leg came up. And so, I cannot argue with what the official called. I mean, you let that go at that time, and you've got commando basketball the rest of the night.
Okay, so that's exactly where I was going to go. Now, and then I'll tell you the story after. So my first thought when I saw it, that this is an absolute deliberate act. Okay. So and my thing is if I see a guy throw a pass, kick a guy in the pills, with a front kick, which is what we're talking about here, I do kill it, Jimmy. I do. Okay.
Yeah.
I kill it and I tee the kid. Okay. Because that's an unsportsmanlike act. Now we're talking high school. We can't review it flagrant. That's absolutely an unsportsmanlike act. Okay. 2 shots in the ball. All right.
Mm-hmm.
Now let me go back and tell you the story. All right. You, me, and Don were working at St. Joe's against Cary. Okay. Cary had a player that on defense, every time he would close out, he would jab at the kid's belly. Okay. Jab. The first time I told him to knock it off. The second time he did it, I told him to knock it off. And I told the coach, I said, the next time he does it, that's a technical foul. Right? Guess what the dumbass does? He does it a third time. It's a technical foul. Coach goes, well, what? I'm like, Coach, if he hits that kid in the pills with that forearm, whether he meant it or with that hand, whether he meant it or not, we're going to have all hell break loose. There's 2 things you never do to a guy. You don't hit him in the pills and you don't slap him in the face. You do either one of those 2 things or talk about his mother. You do one of them things, all hell's breaking loose, right?
You got it.
We ain't having that stuff, boys. We ain't having it. All right. So for me, that's a technical foul. Okay. Period. Because that way you send a message. You do that shit again, and it sends a message to the other team and the rest of the team. You do that crap again, you're not getting a technical, you're getting ejected. Because that technical foul, that's a warning. Right? That's your warning. That's your sideline warning, boys. Do that shit again, you ain't gonna like the result. So anyway.
Yeah, so and we all know how tight it was reffing over at St. Joe.
Yes, sir.
And it's very hard to see everything. But when you see if you see something like that, you call the kid on it, and so you don't have to keep watching. I mean, you do, but you hope that you settle it. Mm-hmm. And more than once when I've seen something kind of similar, and I tell them, we're not going to stand for that. I also say, and now by doing that, you got my full attention.
Yes, sir.
Let them, just leave it. I didn't say I'm going to be watching you like a hawk. I said, you got my full attention now for that.
So now that we've thoroughly reviewed this, and I think we've gotten to the bottom of it. Hey, Jim, why don't you start us off with a famous tales from Jimmy Borgia?
Well, this was Don and I and Matt Kemp. We traveled down to Worcester this night. Got there and they're playing Ashland. And somehow when we introduced ourselves, the coach from Ashland knew my uncle from softball and stuff. As we talked a little bit and we went on about the game, we got out there and up and down the court and pretty good ball game. And there was a timeout with maybe about 14 seconds before we went at a halftime. We come out of the timeout. Matt was on the baseline. We're going full court. I'm at midcourt on the back because they had a couple girls back there kind of keeping a press on them to not get the ball up. anyway, they brought the ball and the girl starts dribbling towards me. And I'm like thinking to myself, we got to be getting close to the 10-second call. All of a sudden, the girl comes and there was contact. I'm blowing my whistle. You can hear it. And just all of a sudden, I could hear that little boop from Matt's whistle. And I look over and I'm looking up at the clock. Yes, it should have been a 10-second call, but I had the call. So I walked towards the table. As I'm getting there, the coach from Aspen, Jim, he said it should have been a 10-second call. He's pointing up at the clock. And I said, Coach, you're absolutely right. But it wasn't called, so we got to go with what we did. So I said, I'll talk to Matt at halftime about that. So we get back in the locker room at halftime, and I said to Matt, I said, did you miss something there? And he goes, yeah. He said, I forgot to start my count once the girl got the ball in. So we went back out to start the second half, and the horn blew. I got the ball, threw it over to Matt, and I walked over to coach from Ashland. I said, Coach, I said, I talked to Matt about that. And I said, I kind of got to take a little bit of the responsibility here. I said, I forgot that Matt stutters. And without missing a beat, the coach says, well, tell him to count by twos. The whole coaching staff erupts. They're laughing their heads off. I'm laughing with them. I turn and look as we're getting ready to start the third quarter, and Matt's looking at me like, what the hell just happened over there? And as we got back in the locker room after the game, he said, what'd you say to him? And I told him exactly what I said. He said you should count by twos if you got a stuttering problem. So that's one of the little funny things that, from time to time that go on.
All right, Don, tell us what are your famous Nardo specials?
I was looking for something early in my career, and I had seen a picture this last week of a couple of retired coaches from Lorain County that got me thinking about some of the longtime great coaches they had over there. My very first varsity game was at Oberlin High School, and they were playing Elyria Catholic. And I didn't know this was a huge rivalry till I walked in and saw the banners and the signs that were taped up. But the story on this is Andy Nappy was supposed to be working that game, and he got a bad case of the flu and called me. I think it was early Saturday morning. I said, listen, you have a game tonight? I said, no, I've got one this afternoon, but it was somewhere close. I said, why? What's up? He goes, I can't. And he sounded pretty rough, but he said, I need somebody to take my place over to Oberlin tonight. I said, I haven't done any varsity games yet, Andy. And he said, well, what do you think? And I said, well, last year towards the end of the season, I did a junior varsity college game over at Heidelberg. He goes, well, how'd you do? I said, I thought we did pretty well. As far as stamina, it was 103 to 99. Heidelberg played a AAU team out of Toledo, and he said, "You feel confident you can handle it?" And I said, "Yeah, I can handle it." He said, "Okay, well, I'll call the athletic director and let him know you're coming to my place." So I get there, and my partner comes in, and he had been hurrying because he had a girls' game that afternoon too on the other side of Cleveland. So now he's driven all the way to Oberlin, and so I didn't have the heart to tell him that this was my first varsity game. We just went on and talked as normal. And of course, now Elyria Catholic was coached by Bob Ginta, and to tell you a little bit about that gentleman, I had to do some research. But one of the oddest things when I did the research, that I found out that he had just passed away last Saturday, February 1st. Bob was 94 years old. And I looked at where he started and whatnot. After military service in 1958, he became the head coach at Wapakoneta St. Joe, no longer a high school there, Wapak. Was there for 5 years. Then he moved to Salina Immaculate Conception, and there's no high school at Salina IC anymore. 3 years there, and then he went to Elyria Catholic. At Elyria Catholic, in 22 years, his record was 329 wins, 154 losses. For his career at all three schools, 433 and 235. Just amazing, amazing coach. And in this game, it was a big rivalry game because the best athlete at Elyria Catholic lived in Oberlin. His name was Brian Thomas. He was a two-time All-Ohio running back, just super athlete. He played football at Pittsburgh. The big sign on the wall, and this is the one that I knew we're in for a rivalry game. EC, Elyria Catholic, EC has the best player or best team money can buy. And I thought, oh boy. So it was a rat race back and forth, and it final score was by a point. It's 51-50 or 52-51. It was just a scream fest. I mean, with the fans and all. I remember I called two goaltending basket interference calls, one on each school. So those canceled out, but I don't remember a whole lot, except we did a whole lot of running and not a lot of scoring because there was good defense played. But when I was thinking about that, I thought, gee, after seeing that about Bob, I'm going to change my story about this a little bit and really highlight what kind of a career that gentleman had. And there were, in our book, we do mention Jim Lawhead, who used to coach at Lorain Catholic. Mm-hmm. And in the obituary, Jim said a lot of really nice things. And Jim's son, the other paper talked to him, and they talked how Jim and Bob were such good friends, coaching against each other all those years and stuff. And just, and I think that was the only time I ever refereed for Bob Genta, because none of us went over to Elyria Catholic to officiate, and they were in and out of leagues back in those days. And the leagues they were in were all from Elyria on east. And so the Cleveland guys took care of games over there, but Jim Lawhead was good enough to have us in 2-3 times a year over to Lorain Catholic to work for him. So that's my first story. It's not really a funny one. It's what I remember of my first game. And in my first game, I had a guy that was an absolute gem of a coach. My next story will be about another guy from over there who was not quite as, let's just say he was about as scrappy and verbal as a coach can be.
Must be from.
Well, it's funny you say that because, the two things. Mine's really quick. You mentioned Oberlin. It's one of the craziest places to work. They dress you in an old locker room with a shower that hasn't been cleaned since Abraham Lincoln, I think.
A lot of water rust up on that shower head.
But that is one of the first. That is the one and only place that I was working a 2-man game. I was under the basket where a kid had dunked it and shattered the backboard, and it rained on my head. We obviously had to suspend the game because but.
Yeah, not a school like that. They don't keep an extra backboard.
No. It's not like the NBA. It was the craziest damn thing. Awesome. But I actually didn't know what happened. It just sounded like crack boom, it was just like a boom. And it just rained these little shards of glass on you. It was crazy. But yeah, I got the hell out of there. But my quick story is me and Don are in a lot. Well, first of all, let me set it up. This little quick story is not only for the newlyweds, especially the men, but for all us guys that have been in the war for quite a few years. Okay. So Don and I are in the locker room and we're working with this young official. Just got married. He's probably been married 6 months, maybe. And we're talking to him, asking him how it's going. And, he's like, oh yeah, everything's great. She listens to everything I tell her, and I'm going to do this, and my trophies are going to go over there, and I'm going to go over there. And I remember looking at Don going, this bastard don't know what the hell's going to happen. I'm like, his shit's not, if he'll be lucky if his shit ends up in the garage. It most likely he's going to end up in the junk or in a rummage sale, one or the other, or maybe both. I'm just sitting there going, this guy's got no clue. I'm like, if he thinks, I said, first of all, if you think as a man, you're the man you're the boss of that house, you're stupid. you're just stupid, because you're not going to win every war. No way. And they keep a checklist, right, Don? They remember everything we've ever done, and they throw that shit right back in our face. So let me tell you, boys, from a guy that's had 34 years of hash marks, better find out who the boss is quick, because it ain't you.
I'll remind Sherry and Susie the next time.
Well, they know. Sherry knows she's the boss. All right, Jim. Let's tell us go ahead, Don. What you got?
I noticed we got a couple people listening live to us. This being broadcast live Thursday night on YouTube, and so if those two guys want to give us a shout out or let us know where they're listening from, or they got a question, or they want to make a comment about Jim's pizza sauce or anything like that, go ahead and you can do that on the website there, somewhere underneath where you're watching us. Yep. There's a spot there that you can chat with us. So, or
if you're wondering if Jimmy's has a Brillo pad on his head, or if that's actually his hair.
See, this is actually my hair. See where Rick's got his hat on. So, well, Don, I don't know if he's got a bought a toupee, because that looks like a whole lot of hair on top of his head.
So what do you got, Jimmy? Hard. Tell us a story, Jimmy.
But Rick's got that ball cap on, so we don't want to see the shining light.
Hey, I got to do what I got to do, brother. Tell us your story quick, big guy.
Well, you threw it right back at me so fast. I'm trying to think.
Uh-oh. I thought I saw smoke coming out of your ears.
Yeah, it was. I didn't anticipate coming back so quick.
I'll give you a second or two to think of one here. I saw this on TV a week and a half ago. Everybody knows TV Ted Valentine. And there was time back in the 80s, 90s. He was doing a lot of games in the Big Ten. And at one time I heard he lived down in Westerville, but I've seen him 2 or 3 times a year down at Clemson and ACC games. He works a lot of those. And, the people down at Clemson, they know him as TV Ted, and colorful, controversial, but you always see him on a lot of big games. Oh, and when I saw this time, he had a play that he made a call on near sideline, and what he called a foul on the defender, that was his sideline, and his coach was right there. I mean, all 3 of them were right together in that very enclosed little group. So he just quick flashed the number to the scorer's table, and all of a sudden the player and the coach both kind of jumped him to want to argue or ask what had happened. He gave him the stop sign, and he turned and walked quickly down to the end line, and still with his back to these guys, just crossed his arms like this, staring into the crowd, just like, I'm not talking to you. Good night. And Johnny it was like, man, oh man. I mean, nothing more than the stop sign. And you can't hear what they said, but they did both jump him at once, wanting to know what the call was about. And he just turned and walked. I thought it was funny. I also thought, if many other people besides Ted would do that, they'd probably catch hell from the supervisor about that.
I'm sure,
because those games are all on TV, and somebody does something that looks to be, I'm bigger than the game. I don't have to tell you anything. That they frown on that stuff. I was looking up a little bit about TV Ted and putting it into the Google search. Right where it says after his name, it said known as TV Ted.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
I've seen-
it's not the first time he did that. There
Mhm.
is video of him back, I don't know, early 2000s doing the same thing. So I don't know if he does this once a year or it's been that long that he did it, but it's not the first time. And after reading that, I did get a little chuckle out of it.
So Jimmy, you can Google it and you can see it. So now you got a story.
Yeah, I got
Yeah,
a
yeah.
story.
Is Paul
Again,
long enough for you?
it's yeah, just long enough that I could throw something around in my head, kind of rattle, and that's what you were hearing. It was the night, and again, it's always when we go to these schools, they got the cake raffles going. I always bought them. My two partners, over this way, they wouldn't even pull a dollar out of their wallet to buy some chances. So I would always buy, and the night in question here is we were over to Old Fort, and I had bought some, and I always tell the girls I write rough on the back, and I look at the the variety that they got out there, and I'd say, if you pull my name, I want this. Well, hey, who doesn't like a good homemade apple pie? Well, anyway, we go into the locker room after some of the JV game, and as we're going by, girls says, "Hey, you want the pie?" And here I am walking back with another, goodie to take back and share with my partners and stuff. And we got back there, and Billy Seitz was with us one night over
Somebody's
at Old
breaking
Fort.
into Nardos. Go ahead.
Well, I'm pointing at both of you guys.
No, I think somebody's breaking in at Nardo's house.
I'm just trying to ask Rick something without being louder over you. Go ahead.
But as we're getting into the locker room, at the end of the game, I want to share with my two buddies, and we didn't have a knife or a fork or anything, but the place where I was working happened to be where Rick got me into. He got like a place where you send the hotel and motel supplies. So I reached in there and individually wrapped cups, and I took the cup, scooped it into the pie, hand one to Don, come back, got another one, scooped it up, gave one to Billy, come back in, scooped one up, and had one for myself. And there you go. I mean, I don't know how many more goodies we would have had if these two guys wouldn't be so damn cheap. I mean, it's only $1, $1.
It's us, John. It's us,
$1.
Don. It's always us.
$1.
Always us, Don.
$1.
But anyway, Don, you got one more, and then I'm gonna tell a joke, and or not a joke. I'm gonna tell a story. We're gonna
a joke.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, true.
Yeah. This is I
go.
said two guys that were legends over in Lorain County and didn't make the book. It was Bob Walsh, who coached his entire career in Lorain County at 4 different schools. He started in the Clearview school system as, I think, a junior high, and then a JV coach and a varsity coach in '66. And in 1974, his team won the Class AA, or the Class AA state championship. In his years at Clearview, he ended up with a 241 wins, 104 loss record. After leaving Clearview, he went to Oberlin in 1982, and took him 4 years to put together another state championship run. This also in Class AA. 1986, they were state champions. And at Oberlin, he had a 199 win, 61 loss record. He followed that up by coaching at Vermilion, starting there in 1994. And then he went to Elyria High School in 2000. A Hall of Famer. And Bob passed away, I believe I saw in 2022. About the same age, probably passed away in his low 90s, but just like Bob Ginta. Well, the story on this one, I had officiated a few times for Bob over the years. The first time I officiated, they saw me. I did a JV game over at Clearview, And that was the first time I'd ever been at Clearview. I'd heard all these things about their great teams. The school was pretty average, but he was one of those guys. I did good enough that he didn't have to ask somebody who my name was or yell at me or anything. And a couple of times at Oberlin, his teams won handily quite often. And when I was there, so he didn't have any reason to get smoked, outside of maybe a couple of times. But you could see he could be a pistol on the sidelines. But when he got to Vermilion was because they're right on the borderline of Lorain and Erie County. For years, they were connected with teams in the Northwest District, then the Northeast District, then back to the Northwest District, and they got put in the league. I don't remember what it was called, but they got put in the league with Elyria, Lorain, Sandusky, Fremont. Is at that time, it used to be the Buckeye Conference, wasn't any longer, and they were in with some pretty tough schools. So it was a basketball game over at Vermilion at Sandusky, and Sandusky was really good. Back in the 2-man days, no idea, no remembrance of who my partner was. Might even have been Jim. I just don't remember because the way this happened was kind of funny. Sandusky got out to a hellacious start. It looked like they're going to run them right out of the county in the first quarter. And as the first quarter came to the end, the score was probably like 26-6 or 26-8 or something, just terrible. The Vermilion kids couldn't catch the Sandusky kids to foul them, and the Sandusky kids were too quick, for Vermilion for me to call any fouls on Vermilion. There's nothing to call. I mean, Vermilion's throwing the ball away against Sandusky's press. Sandusky was putting the ball. It was horrible. And I was over by a scorer's table at the gap between the periods, and all of a sudden here he comes, and he's just spitting and yelling and pointing at me. And I looked at him and I gave him the stop sign, and I said, "Listen, coach, I can't do anything to stop them from scoring." And at that time, his assistant coach put him in a bear hug. And I went all day trying to figure out what the guy's name was because I had officiated for him. He was at Western Reserve. Ed Dolinar was the guy, and he was an assistant for Ed at for Bob at Oberlin and Vermilion. And in between there somewhere is when he was the head coach at Western Reserve for a while. And he had a couple of pretty good teams out there. And we probably went out there to do scrimmage for him at the beginning, before the season, a game or two somewhere, maybe one there, one on the road. And I know he really liked me because we had talked after games sometimes. And so he came around and he grabbed him and right away turned him away from me and talked to him. And all of a sudden, Walsh walks right back to the huddle and starts talking to his kids. And they came out and ended up playing much better. The score didn't continue to spread. That 22 to 25 point advantage there, whatever it was at the first quarter, it stayed right in that zone. John Schlesman, who coached Sandusky, subbed often. I mean, he just moved players in and out the whole time. One thing he did, it kept players fresh for his team, but got a lot of players on the floor. And actually, from that point on, the Vermilion kids played much better. I think they were just shocked over the speed and quickness of the Sandusky kids. But had not Ed Dolinar come up and grabbed him and turned him away, that could have gotten pretty funny between he and I, because the last thing I was going to do is give him a break and tee him and throw him or anything because, when a coach gets that frustrated, I'm not going to let him off the hook. And there's one situation in the book about that. In a game I had at St. Wendland many years ago. I couldn't think of Ed Dolinar's name yesterday when I was writing down some notes about this, and I thought there's one guy who will know. Our buddy Rob Polinsky, over at WEOL in Elyria, has a great mind for anything sports. Batting average of somebody back in 1999 for the Indians, or who played here for the Browns, all that. He's got a great mind. So I was in the midst of jotting him a quick text message. I said, I'm looking for a name. would have been Bob Walsh's assistant coach at Oberlin and Vermilion, and coached out at Western in the middle of that time. And as I'm thinking, as I was starting to write that, I'm thinking Ed's the first name. I lost on the last name. I got halfway through that text, and all of a sudden Dolinar comes to me. But I finished it, and I said, would it be Ed Dolinar? And he goes, yeah, he is still an assistant coach at Firelands High School. He says, you know, he's one of those basketball lifers that just hangs around schools and, you know, just likes to be around the kids, like to coach. And so got a chance to check in with Rob, confirm the name, and I just remember Phil Joseph from Bucyrus is another one of those guys that was a basketball lifer, all at Bucyrus. I think Jimmy and I, our first Northern Ohio League varsity game was at Bucyrus, and Phil was the head coach at Bucyrus, and he just passed away within the last 10 days too. Yeah. And my guess is he was spending this winter on the basketball court like he always has. A great guy, and you know, as much as some people move around in the coaching industry, you really got to respect a guy that picks a community and spends so much time with kids there. So that's a Bob Walsh story, Ed Dolinar included, and a salute to Phil Joseph for a life well lived in coaching.
Yeah, and as we're getting ready to close here before we do our ad spot, not Junior Mints, Jimmy. What I wanted to say, a couple things. First of all, I wanted to say how blessed I really am in life, and blessed to have partners like you guys and to write the book. You know, God had his hand on all that stuff because, boy, he couldn't have picked three goofier guys to write a book. But, and we did it, and it actually makes sense. So, but this is to tell you guys, you know, God is good and God is in everybody's life. You know, pray for the people. You know, pray to make sure your life is good. And if you're blessed, be a blessing. And by saying that, this Sunday is Super Bowl Sunday. Everybody knows that. I'm wearing one of my art rings, you know, that I work on. That's what I do. I don't know if anybody knows that. The reason I'm wearing this is to go back to tell you that this is a blessing and how this ring particularly came about. Now, I don't know. I'm pretty sure these guys know the story. But the story is, back when I was working with a print industry company, I was flying out of Atlanta, Georgia, and I was flying on Southwest back when you were loaded by a letter card. How you got there is how you got loaded, A, B, C, D. I got there 4 hours before the flight because the meeting got over and they left me off and I had nothing else to do. I'm sitting there waiting for the plane. And people watching, which is all we had to do because we didn't have these fancy cell phones. All of a sudden, I see this well-dressed older man come into the terminal area where I'm sitting, and he's got an NFL briefcase. Literally, it looks like an NFL football. And he's talking to everybody on the other side, and I'm reading my USA Today going, yeah, okay, whatever. I'm just thinking he's some old guy, maybe a scout or something. Not paying attention. So we get boarded. I always like the seat by the window, so I go in and sit by the window. Come to find out, this elderly gentleman comes in and sits next to me. And he said, and people are talking to him as they're going by, and I'm here reading my paper. I don't talk to people on the plane. I'm sure a lot of you folks are the same way, especially when you're by yourself. So we get ready. We start taxiing, and he breaks open up his briefcase. It's got some Tennessee Titans stuff on it. And, you know, and I'm thinking, he's a scout for the Titans. You know, that's cool. So as we take off and they begin beverage service, they stop, you know, and go by. And, you know, the stewardess is talking to him. And I'm thinking, I got to find out who this guy is. Because everybody on this freaking plane knows who he is but me. So we're talking, and I'm looking over, and I'm like, sir, I don't like talking to people or bother them on a plane. But apparently everybody on this plane knows you but me. And he goes, oh, He goes, well, who do you think I am? I'm like, fuck. I'm like, okay, well, you kind of look like Pete Rozelle, who, if you don't know, used to be the football commissioner. And he goes, oh, no, I'm way better looking. And as he makes this big gesture, I see this giant ring on his finger. He goes, no, son, I'm Bart Starr. And I'm like, Bart Starr? He goes, yeah. And I'm like, he goes, I said, holy smokes. And as the stewardess goes back by me, he goes, wait a minute. He goes, you want a beer? I'm like, yeah, I'd love a beer. So me and Bart, now picture this, me and Bart Starr are on Southwest drinking beers, talking football. And he talks about the Ice Bowl, and he tells me that he couldn't feel his nuts for 2 days after. And, I'm like, well, yeah, that adds up. It's like -40, and we're talking football and how much of an asshole Lombardi was, and all this stuff. So fast forward, I'm getting into the ring business, and we're just newbies. Nobody knows us. Nobody cares. So the Packers end up winning the Super Bowl. We send our artwork in. Don't hear anything. Not a word. So I'm thinking, we're new guys. Nobody cares. 2 weeks later, I get a call from the Green Bay Packers. I pick up the phone. And I said, yeah. He goes, is this Rick Hall? And I said, yep. He goes, this is Bart Starr. Do you remember me? And I said, yeah, I do. He goes, I remember you. And he goes, I saw your guys' artwork. He goes, would you like to do the rings for us? And here it is, right on my finger. So to tell you that God's got a plan for your life and God is good, that's the absolute truth. I mean, how does those two things marry up? How do I sit next to a football legend on a plane where it's a random seating and we sit and drink beers like you're drinking beers with your dad talking football?
Did you buy him one?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. We said, we drink about 4 or 5 beers between Atlanta and Charlotte, which is where he got out.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Oh, man, that's not a long flight either.
No, And we're talking, laughing. I mean, we're making all kind of noise, talking football. And he's telling me about his teammates, and it was awesome. It was like, how do you get it? I mean, it's a captive audience with a legend, and that guy, that many years later, remembered who I was. So God's got a plan, boys. He does. So that all being said, as we close, don't forget us. Our book is available on Amazon in paperback, hardback, which is in color. And you can see every dimple on Jimmy's face.
Yeah.
Or you can go get it at the Common Good, which is on sale right now for $14 a piece or 2 for $25. And give us a like, give us a message, click the alert bell. You'll see when we're going live, and we can have some fun together. We are going live next week again with our famous buddy, Steve Gray.
Great.
So
great guy. Yeah.
Take a chance at chatting with Steve and giving him some crap like we've given him all these years. So you guys got anything to go in closing?
I hope a lot of the Norwalk people see this tonight and they join in on our podcast next week. Would really like to hear some comments, some of the stories that, again, like you only know them if you're behind the scene, like the players and the managers and stuff like that.
Don?
I spent 12 and a half years at Norwalk High School, and finally graduated.
Okay.
After I retired, I worked at Norwalk High School for 12 and a half years, and Steve was an absolute blast to be around. He's got such a great sense of humor. He's been fortunate to have a lot of nice athletes play for him at his 4 stops, and You know, he had a great situation in Norwalk with some young kids that were very well schooled, and he did a great job bringing those kids along just right. That team that won the state championship is probably one of the best teams of young men that you'd ever want to be around. Just splendid guys. Many of them have great business careers right now, and I think Steve would probably share a little bit of that with us next week. And again, being that we're live, if you've got something you'd like to ask, you have a chance next week. We'll be on at 8:00 Thursday night on YouTube. Just go to Officials Tales, and the live feed will be in there. There's some of our old shows are on there, but the live feed, you can tell right away. It's got a red bar on it. If you're looking at it now live, you can see there's a red bar on the video there, so you know that it's live. And you can do a chat with Rick. We're gonna have him test himself to see if he can do about 4 things at one time without blowing up the screen.
We're going to try like hell, I'll tell you that. Well, thanks again for joining us, and we'll see you next week.
Have a great week.
Adios.
Good night. Stay warm.